great to see so many familiar faces here, and it's all the new guys with the D1 team. Great to see them here today as well. My name is Brian Corley, and I coached here from 2005 to 2015. When I started, my first assistant coach was a woman from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan named Mandy Fairlako, and we worked together here for 2 years to get this program going again. After that, I was able to recruit an outstanding player from the Rockford area named Whitey Brown. And with him came his father, Jeff Brown, who was a tremendous assistant coach for us. And together for 5 years, we put the program back in a position where we were competing for regional championships and eventually ended up going to the Nationals and finishing third in the nation during Jeff's last year. I mention all that because after that 5th year, Jeff was going to return back to Rockford, putting out such an effort to come down here 3 and 4 times a week to coach with us. So appreciated. So now I had a lot of pressure on me because we built something that was going pretty well, and I had a huge vacancy, big shoes to fill. At the same time, the Pepsi Ice Center here had a vacancy as well. Had some difficulty with the general manager that was here at the time. Because I was involved with the development of all this, I had the ear and the respect of Bart Wells, the director of Parks and Rec here. I found a guy named Mike Hernbrott, who I thought would be the perfect next assistant coach for Illinois State hockey. But we weren't flush with a lot of money at the time, so I needed to find him a job as well. So, to make a long story short, I worked with Barb Wells, with Michael, and we were able to bring the whole package together. The Pepsi Ice Center got the most outstanding general manager they've ever had, and I got an outstanding assistant coach. And I remember Mike, he has that smile that he's on his face right now. When we returned to the Nationals for the 2nd year in a row, it was his first year coaching, and he thought to himself, you know, this is pretty cool. We made it back here with me. And but you know, hockey isn't about the score on the scoreboard. It's not about putting pucks in the net. It's about the development of the character of the young men that we get to coach. And maybe some of you know, maybe some of you don't, but Michael was a Marine. And when I think of the Marines, always loyal, courage, commitment, honor. He brought all those things into our program and just raised us to a whole nother level in terms of developing the young men that we had the responsibility of being with for sometimes 4 or 5 years. Big responsibility. And that's what Michael brought to the program most of all. He was tremendous in developing the kids off the ice, as well as putting a great program on the ice. I stepped away in 2015, and I was very concerned because I had put a lot of effort into building something, and I didn't want to see it crumble. Mike stepped in and took that baton and just kept on running forward, and you can see where we are right now. It's because of a lot of people, but the backbone of that whole thing moving forward from there was Mike Hernbrott. And for that, Mike, I really appreciate you each and every day and what you've done. Chris Pruitt coming in and taking over that D1 program and achieving what they've done, it's just tremendous. So great teamwork with the two of you guys. So with all that being said, I want you to understand and appreciate everything that Mike's brought to the program. And with that, I'd like to present to you the newest member of the Illinois State Hockey Redbird Hockey Hall of Fame, Michael Hernbrott.
Smash it, Anybody that knows me is not surprised by Bruce Springsteen being the walk-up music. So thank you, Brian. Thank you to all the members of the Hall of Fame committee. I'm truly grateful for the honor and appreciative of everything that you've done. Thank you to Jim Peterson, who, again, didn't know what he was getting into when we came. Quick story on Jim. So where our D2 and D3 team meets, they have a locker room as well, about a block and a half away from here in a warehouse that Brian set up for them. And when you first walk in, there's a picture on the wall of three individuals. And it says the Founding Fathers. One of them is Emo. Was just as he does today. He was just as young today as he does in that picture. Dub Easton is in that picture, and then there was another guy in the middle that was not identified. I had no idea, and I would ask people, does anybody know who this person is? And people were like, no, we don't know who he is. And then about maybe a few years after I got here, the president of the club at the time reached out and says, there's this guy that says he was the original president of the club. I don't know who he is. I know you do stuff with the alumni. Do you want to talk to him? I go, sure. So I talked to Jim for a few minutes on the phone. I go, hey, you're the guy. You're the guy in that picture. So Jim came up, brought a storage box of a lot of the history that we now see live here. An original jersey that seemed about this big. And while we were kind of giving Jim the tour and all that, his daughter kind of snuck up to me, and we were talking about doing something with alumni and all that kind of thing. And she said, you know, if you want somebody to help, my dad would be good for that. So lucky things in the shoulders that we land on. I also want to thank my wife, Lisa, who she has always, throughout life, supported everything, every goofy idea that I've ever had. And without her, none of this would have been accomplished and all that. I'd like to thank my daughter, Katie, and her husband, Kevin. I also say you're welcome from getting away from our 4 grandchildren for the evening. Thank you for coming. My son, Dan, lives out in Seattle with his wife, Alessandra. They wanted to be here, but honestly, I told them, come in the summer when we probably have some more time to spend some family time with it. I also want to thank everybody up here at the tables, family from all over the country, come from all over the country to help support me. I really do appreciate all of you. So, how'd golf go this morning? All right. A few things I want to talk about. Some of the people talked about lessons learned and how you pass them on. I didn't learn them all in the Marines. Really where I learned most of the things. I want to remember my mother, Peggy, who taught me that there's no greater gift you can give yourself than helping others. Carry that with me all the time. My father was a coach. My father was a great baseball coach. I know we talked about OPRF. My father won a national or a state championship in 1943 with the Oak Park Huskies, and he was a great baseball coach. He was an okay hockey coach, but he was a great baseball coach. But coaching is sort of a universal thing, and some of the lessons that I try to pass on that he taught is the sport itself is only a vehicle to be used to develop good and decent human beings, and you can't coach a player if you don't love a player, and I carry that with me. So I'm going to kind of color some things in from at least my memories of how I met Brian Corley. This is how it started. It started with a voicemail I received in 2012. It said, Michael, this is Brian Corley. I'm the head coach of Illinois State Hockey, and I feel compelled to help you. And I went, that's an odd voicemail, but hey, he's compelled to help me, so I'm gonna call him back. And that was the start of the journey. Brian was aware that the Bloomington, or the Pepsi Ice Center at the time, the Bloomington Ice Center was in need of a manager. Started to let me know that was the year that his team was starting to make the run to go to nationals that first year. So I did some scouting on him. I was so raw as a scout, I went in and I talked to a team that he sent me to talk to, and I was ready to walk out of the locker room, and the coach stopped me. He said, "Do you want to say anything about the college or the program?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that would be a good idea. I should probably talk about those kind of things." So that's how I started. That first year was a whirlwind. Really, I signed up to be a cone mover. And luckily that year, the skill and talent on that team allowed that team to go to a national championship with a cone mover on the bench. So there were great lessons from that. I learned a lot of great lessons from Brian. Also that year, Brian held a luncheon for alumni, and his guest speaker was Emil Ludi. And Emil got up and talked about hockey at ISU in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, and I remember thinking, this guy had to be the worst student ever. But I've gotten to know Emil over the years and his entire family, and I've learned about the history through these events and through the countless amount of stories and the people that I've met through this, that I understand that we all are just standing on shoulders, and it's step by step by step. And for the D1 players do hear about driving to Pekin in the night in the winter, and then we skate them. So I learned all of those things. So when Brian stepped down after successfully moving the program to D1 and D2, I recognized the shoulders I was standing on, and I wanted to continue the forward progress he had started. I was beginning to recognize the several years of failed professional and junior teams that were in this building, and how important ISU was to people, how important ISU actually is to our youth hockey programs here. If ISU did not have this as the home rink, our youth hockey teams would have to drive to Chicago, to St. Louis to play their games. So not only does ISU help the hockey program, the kids of the day, it also helps this city. It brings people into downtown, and it helps our youth hockey organizations. One thing that Brian said to me that I still keep in the back of my mind, he invited us out to his farm one night. I asked him that first season, I said, if Lisa and I had plans, we can't make a weekend trip, would that be okay? And he said, we ask our players to be committed. It would be difficult to lead if we don't ask the same thing of ourselves. So that is always in the back of my mind, and it's something that I take forward to our players today. So as I'm moving down the ladder in ISU hockey, I've coached pretty much every level that's been here. I'm coaching the D3 team this year, and I'm kind of hoping to find someone I can mentor to coach. But just like Brian said, the organization is in the hands of Chris Pruitt, who you met, and also Nikki Burns, who's been the general manager for the last couple of years. And I know the commitment that they have for this program is going to help it take the next generation of players going forward. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. I love all of you guys, and thank you very much.